Hello to the TUC meeting, 24th of March. We have our usual agenda without any working group update today. We had already a round of all the working groups, and yeah, we decided to pause a little bit the updates and then start again at some point after Easter. So that means review action items. We will go over the dashboard and talk about any other business. Action items from last week. No action items. It's quite empty, our notes. So then we can just jump to the dashboard. We have no PRs, so we can go to the RFCs. First one is about dynamic disks support in Bosch. So we had a long discussion last TUC meeting, and we continued the discussion during the foundational infrastructure working group. And we had iterated and agreed on a path forward. That's why also we started end of last week, so on Friday, the final comment period, because we postponed that one. We postponed the final comment period for the final foundation infrastructure working group meeting to discuss and find alignment between different proposals. So we have found that alignment, and we updated also the RFC. It has been updated by Maria. So final comment period started. And I don't see any comments which stops us from accepting this one. So there were no additional comments after that. Yeah. So we can then finish this one or start, let's say. Um, okay, we have all the approvals. Okay, it was yeah, a lot of discussions, but I think we then had more clarity on the scope and aligned on how we can adopt this in open source and so on. So I think it was also somehow productive for the RFC. Okay, then most probably the other one, which is related to this one, Ruben, by you, we can close this in favor of the other one, or?
I think this one has a bigger scope, so I think there's gonna be this one needs some work, right? Now that the other one is merged, and then this one can start focusing on the Diego side, I guess.
Okay, yeah, if you want to proceed like that, yeah, then yeah, yeah. Okay. So we all need a little bit adaptation and renaming, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Then container to this one about MTLS for Diego, container to container traffic. There were some discussions, still open discussions, I see.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
and I
it
think
seems like a lot of the energy from this one has moved to the other one. Are we still interested in having this RFC open?
um I don't know. Like we want one of them, right? We don't need both. We want a solution, and so yeah, it's about for us. It's about where we can find consensus, right? To move forward. But both would work for like any of those would work for us.
I didn't realize that was the status. I thought you wanted them both. I've been ignoring that one in favor of the other one, so I haven't even reviewed the one that was just on the screen. Or not closely, like I have the other one.
Yeah, no, but like so I think feedback from the SAP side was that they prefer the app to app one, so the second one, right? So the second one was created because there was feedback on that, like container to container cannot work in their for their use case.
Yeah.
So there's already a bit more people interested in that one, at least from the SAP side.
Or maybe we can extend the scope of this and make it work for our scale.
Sure.
I mean, it sounds like the
Can
root
make
problem
you a
is you.
co-author.
It sounds like the root problem is you currently have container to container networking turned off, so it'll work a lot better if you turn it on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you try turning it on? Yeah, okay.
We
Is
try
it
to.
plugged in too?
Yeah.
And how, so you want to continue the discussion on both of them and then at the end see which one survives. So this is, oh,
I don't know. I think currently I'm betting a bit more on the other one. But if we find a blocker that we cannot move past, then I'm happy to revisit this one. Like I would close this one, or yeah, once the other one is merged, I would say. But my focus is currently on the app to app, or the what did I call it? Something dynamic
domain.
domain routing thing. Yes. But I mean, do we want to move this to draft? Is that clearer for people to not lose steam, or what? I don't know how to navigate that.
I think it's fine. And there are open questions which needs to be answered. And it's in progress. I am fine with keeping it like this.
Yeah, and I think there's already a comment from Greg, right, about
Yes.
directing people to the other one. So I think it's fine.
Mm.
And who knows, maybe this will be the like underdog story, and this one will come from behind and end up
Yeah,
winning.
we'll eventually win, right?
Yeah. Okay. Talking about this one. So there
I wrote
were.
a new comment today with everything I plan to say at the meeting, so you don't have to take notes for what I say. It's already right here.
Thank you. I like that.
I know you like that, Beyhan. It was for you. Um, Maybe I'll just say high level my problems with this RFC. Maybe someone I see someone responded. Maybe if you scroll down, I haven't read it yet. Um,
Yeah, I responded to your previous comments
right.
because this one wasn't updated in my view. So it's a bit out of order.
Perfect.
So I responded to some of this. So yeah, that was my comment.
I guess I'm very much against having GUIDs and manifests. That's a big one. We can talk about why if you want. I also don't like that it's not controlled from a single place, like that it's partially in the manifest and it's partially in an app. Sorry, it's partially in a Bosch manifest and partially in multiple, could be in multiple app manifests, so there's not a good way to audit
It's
it.
different other users, right? So the operator sets the outer scope, and then within that, the app developer is allowed to punch
Yeah,
holes,
I
right? But no,
understand that. I think that's a bad idea. Like,
okay.
I think having that you should at least be able to see all the rules from one place. And right now, there's no way to do that. It's just in the Bosch manifest. Like, how is the developer supposed to know what is in the Bosch manifest? Like, if you were to just a developer and trying to understand who can talk to what, you can't see a Bosch manifest. Anyway, so I think it would be good if it was all stored in one place rather than in multiple places. Um, and I
Are
also
you,
think there's like a
are
go
you
ahead.
in favor of having that control in the app manifest or in Bosch? If you have,
I would say neither. I would say it should be an API because I think it also shouldn't be in an app manifest because apps and routes are like different life cycles. Like multiple apps can have the same route. And so like if they're pushed differently, do you override it? Do you have the different endpoints have different security stances? Like anyway, I think it just gets messy there. And like I know we do that for algorithms. Like right now you can set an algorithm for your route in App Manifest. And so one app could set, least connection in one and one route could set round robin in the other. And I think they will clobber each other. But I think that's a way lower risk of clobbering each other than
Yeah,
security measures.
because this comes from like the route options RFC, which already got approved, right? So this is a pattern that was established there.
Yeah, I did not see that RFC before it was approved, I don't think.
Okay, that's a bit of an issue then.
But just because the route options just said, sorry,
Route options is a way of making, like, was introduced to make it easier for people to add additional functionality and not have to go through all the layers, right? So it's
yes, and I think that makes sense for some things where clobbering is less of an issue or where it could be different per backend endpoint. But for security, I don't think it makes sense.
um, so having only in the Bosch manifest is actually you don't need then the quote properties, the route options.
I personally think it should be in an API, kind of like C2C is.
API for admins, CF platform admins, or APIs for
And
whom?
read and write could potentially be different. Like it could be
Yeah.
broad read, narrow write.
And like
yeah.
maybe admin has different permissions then,
But also the problem, I think
make
why it
different rules.
started with Go Router is because of the certs, right? Because you want to configure a CA for a particular domain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is about um, so how I would see this use is that like we have like some same defaults with the same ops file, but in CF deployment, but for different platforms, people could configure this differently, right? And have that in their own documentation. Um, that's what these Bosch level options are for, right? So if you want, for example, you have some sort of maybe a specific partner needs to come in through a specific URL, right? And then you set up a specific CA for that. But it's not like you have many of those, but like maybe 5 or something of these things. But that's specific to your platform, right? And you have documented that. That's where these things come in, right? This is not something that like yes, you would
Maybe
document this, but it's like this is definitely like a platform operator concern, right? Like setting up these things for all your apps on your platform.
maybe
But
we're
allowing
conflating a
that,
few of the things. You're right, because the bit about adding CAs, I can see this in the Bash manifest. I could see something that's like, here's a domain, here's the CAs that are allowed in it, and that's in
Mhm.
Go Router. But I guess the bit that I don't like in the Bosch manifest is the space GUIDs and the app GUIDs and the stuff like
So
that.
the space GUIDs there are for a particular reason, which is like if you want to do foundation to foundation, right? So you have multiple foundations and you have specific domain MTLS domains for that. you want to maybe lock it down to a specific org in another foundation, right? So that's like it was cheap to add, and I think it's an interesting use case, right?
I would
That's
agree
why
that
why
this proposal feels cheap to add. I would say this feels like an engineer was like, how do I get this in the easiest?
okay.
And not like, how will we
But I mean,
want to
like,
use
there is
this and
no,
audit this?
you cannot validate across multiple, like if you have multiple Cloud Foundry deployments, you cannot do a lookup across those, right? At deployment
Sure,
time.
but maybe you, I don't know, work that into an API somehow that like you give some metadata with it or something. Like, is that the only, like the fact that that's not the only use case, the use case could also be internal, right?
Yeah. But let me maybe a step back. Do you see value in this feature from your perspective?
I definitely see value in allowing certain domains have different CA certs. But I guess like and allowing like I understand why you want to lock that down. I guess my concern is that like a lot of this, all of this seems is possible right now. You can use C2C, you can use route services. Like there's other solutions to all these problems.
Mhm.
I'm okay with building a new solution, but I don't want to build a hacky new solution.
Yeah.
I would rather like if we're gonna build it, I would rather build it well and with like a an operating UI that makes sense.
I think what is so reachable without having GUIDs or dealing with so much with spaces is having a domain configurable in the Bosch manifest with certain accepted certificates for
Yeah.
MTLS and the scopes, which I think they also generic. You can say maybe only org scope org. So you get the information from the identity instance identity certificate, and you have the route. Information to which org it belongs, and this can be, so to say, can be a generic rule to allow only from the same org or from the same space, so to say, as an initial scope. So maybe, uh,
Yeah, maybe just off that, like the scope of this RFC is huge right now. And so maybe if
yes.
it was broken down into smaller amounts, it would be easier to like talk about one chunk of it at a time.
Yeah. We've been doing that for a while. It grew. That's what happens, right? It started small. Started with one RFC, then this RFC came because people keep talking about it. So, um,
It's your
so
fault for DMing it to me.
should never have done that.
Could have
Um,
passed it without me ever realizing it. No, kidding.
yeah, note to self. Yeah. Um, so let's go one by one, right? So for the Bosch operator, your concerns are with the GUIDs in there, right? The
Yeah.
GUIDs are in there because Chris had this use case where, I mean, I don't know if they do multiple foundations, but at least they had this use case where they want to treat um, um, organizations as like a real tenant and for, I mean, it's always a real tenant, right? But enforce that there's no cross org communication, right? That was an important one. So that's why, and if you want to do that like across across CF installs, then you would need a feature like that, right? But the GUIDs are for us at Rabobank not like a hard requirement. So I'm happy to get those out, especially because we brought back the scopes, right? Um, yeah, so Chris is also fine. Um, so yeah, if we can, you're okay with the scopes
Um, what do you
at
mean
the
by the scopes?
that's in the.
Like,
Could you take
yeah.
the Beyhan, you're sharing your screen, right? Could you maybe
Yes.
pull up the RFC and we can look at the there's some examples at down at the um
Um, so
You're talking
yeah
it's
about scopes in
the config
Bosch
here in the
manifest.
Bosch manifest,
So
right?
you're saying like
this,
a scope that would say scope, it would literally say org.
yes.
And if an org was not, or if an app was not, if
So
something was trying to access it through the Go router and it wasn't presenting a cert that
was from an app in the same org, then
from
it
an app.
won't. Yeah, so you're as an app are only allowed to communicate with. So you still, as an app developer, need to punch the hole, right? Say to which page you want access. But as an operator, you're saying the outer boundary is the org, right? And you can even set this to space, right? So then apps are only allowed to communicate with each other within a space as long as the developer also allows doing that.
You're saying, okay, I'm just trying to understand this. So this is a per domain,
Yes,
right?
setting.
Yeah.
But
And go ahead, Beyhan.
But maybe we can leave the first scope only on the operator side so they can configure domains with certificates and some authorization, which is based on scope org or scope space.
Mhm.
And with that functionality, we can evaluate whether there is a need on app developer side to still shrink something more than this for domain.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that it's denied by default, right? So the app developer needs to open up and say which things are allowed, right? It's denied by default,
So, but
which
you
is the
can you
same
have
as. Hmm?
but you have scope any, you have scope org, and you have scope space. So the operators. So if there is no requirement to shrink for org or space, you have the any. So any with
Yeah,
that.
from an operator, right? But
Yeah.
then that's anything is allowed, but then the developer still needs to uh, set their allow rules, right?
This
Because otherwise,
But what if
this
they didn't?
Yeah, this we want to understand whether they have the need to set. This is the question, to leave it a
according to the
second.
RFC, how it's currently written is that that nothing is allowed, right? So it's only allowed if and that's how C2C also works, right? Currently,
But we don't have
you have.
two places where you control C to C. There's just the one place. We don't have someone that locks it down some amount and then you can update it within that.
Well, you kind of do with the policy server and then route creation.
What do you
So
mean?
like you can't communicate with a container unless there's a route to it, and that's in
Yeah,
the
or you know
container.
the IP, yeah.
And that's in the yeah, I guess knowing the IP. Yeah, that's true. But that's also a little sneaky.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess in that sense, policy server is the like kind of one source of truth on what can talk to what.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but the scope is really specific to Chris's use case, right? That's why it was added. It was not in there originally, so this was a hard requirement for them to be able to use this feature. Being able
Um,
to, from an operator, say, lock it down to only allow this to work within the scope of an org.
Chris, can you explain that some more just so I can hear it from you as a user, why or what part
Sure.
is useful?
So I have individual agencies that share our common Cloud Foundry environment. I need to be able to make sure that, say, I'll make up some agencies here. The FBI and the EPA can't have applications that talk to each other for reasons. So uh, reserve comments. So there's we would want to within an organization. I want say one of these organizations to be able to have their apps leverage this, but I don't want it to be able to cross the organization boundary.
If it was so that, let's say that this scope was the only thing you could control, and once you said the scope was org, that everything within that org could talk to each other. Like, and the app developers didn't have to do any other narrowing of specifically this app can talk to specifically this. Is that too loosey-goosey for you?
Where's the authorization happening then, right?
I that is probably okay. Um, it's
Any
just
app
like
to any
a
app
lot of yeah, that
within an organization. I mean, for us at Rabobank, that doesn't work, right? Like we need specifically to say this particular app is allowed to talk to this specific app, right? Or this space is allowed to talk to this space, right? Like these types of rules is what we
Mm-hmm.
need.
Mm-hmm. And you don't want to turn on C2C.
Well, we already have that, right? But the reason why we want this is because of the MTLS aspect, right? Currently, I mean, there is already the route integrity certificate, or no, not route integrity, the instance identity cert, right?
Yeah.
Which is a great certificate. We have all sorts of tooling around rotating that, or that's already built into the platform. We want application developers to be using that, right? And currently they are doing managing secrets them or certificates themselves, requesting certificates through all these
Yeah.
awful processes internally, and managing that is a nightmare, right? So we want something in the platform that does it right. And also, like if you have that header, right, with your certificate in there, you need to do proper checking. They don't often understand how that works, right? And like check the wrong thing or it's a nightmare, right? So you just want something simple that locks it down and does the right thing and have everything be MTLS. That's what we are looking for.
And it's mandatory that this is done by the platform. So it's not an option to offer a library that does the checking right as part of the application. That would not be good enough from your point of view.
Well, then the
Or a route
developers actually have to
service.
use it.
Yeah, they have to use it, right? Like it's much nicer if you can just like inspect the platform and see what's opened up, right?
Like-
And if they
like-
use this thing, we know that it's doing the right thing because
Like
otherwise it
imagine
doesn't
if
work.
the existing like instance identity route whatever it's called, route integrity feature was like implemented with a client library. Like
It's
enforcing
like-
that would be very annoying. Like, oh, your app is like using an invalid version of this random middleware.
Okay, back to scopes. Yes, I would say I'm okay with scopes being in the Bosch manifest.
Yeah.
And maybe I think there could be an RFC that's just basically everything that we just discussed up to this point. That's just like the CAs on the domains and the scopes. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying we can't do the rest later, but I think that would be easier to approve. And then,
But that's I think there's different phases, right?
yes,
That's like phase 1A, I
yeah,
would say. And then we'll go to identity and authorization, which is it's the next part.
uh-huh,
So like from a Rabobank point of view, from an end user point of view, it's not that useful. Like there's even a section about like how you need to release this, because if you have just 1A, then you're opening up everything, right? And that's not a good thing, right? Because you need the authorization, because otherwise it's not a good feature, right? Otherwise you're not you don't have the enforcement. That's why they are tied together. So the optional part is the egress part, right? Like the um, that's skipping ahead a bit, but that's really to make it easy for demos, right? And like if they don't like they could easily do with just configuring their HTTP client properly, right? Just use the environment variable that's already there, use the cert for outgoing connections. But I mean, yeah, that's optional in that sense, right? But this is a really critical piece, right? Because this is basically the poking the holes, right? Making sure that they are allowed to reach a space or an app or an org, right? The org one is a bit weird. I don't know what the use case is, but I mean, yeah, just keep it. And we have
yeah. Who knows how people organize their stuff?
Yeah, that's the other side, right? People organize these things differently, right? So that's why I want to keep it flexible. And then there's the any again for people like the autoscaler, right? So there they want to do the integrity, they parse the header, right? And they do the check themselves and use that, right? But they allow traffic from anywhere. So yeah, I think this is scope-wise quite important, right? It doesn't make sense to do it without this part.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the question is the options, right? We're using the route options here, right? I think that was some of your feedback, right? We have GUIDs here. But what I found, like, we have that already on the C2C side, right? Because it's GUIDs there as well.
Yeah, but there's
And
an API and a
sure, there's an
CLI.
API. But the problem is that you set them, then you do a blue-green deploy, and it doesn't work anymore, right? Like we currently apparently have some sort of duct tape that we built, which is looking for all these events, subscribing to the events API, and reapplying these policy rules based on like do the name lookup, and I think we have like a name for the blue and the green, basically, right? That it applies it to both. That feels like a thing that's missing within the platform, right? That we should solve holistically for this feature as well as the C2C side. Like having, but that I don't know, that feels like something that could be a separate RFC.
I agree that C2C has this issue that has been a long-standing complaint since C2C existed.
Mm-hmm.
C2C currently fails, I would say loudly, in that like when you do your blue-green deploy, what's the new one? The green one, it just like won't work, right? Like you're, I don't know, it's like very clear because the policy's not there. I would
Yeah.
rather it failed loudly than I think putting it in app manifest makes it fail like silently because apps can override each other and it's like less clear. Oh, someone keeps pushing their app with an old manifest and it keeps overriding my rules.
Yeah. To be clear, you can also just update the route, right? You don't have to put this in your manifest.
Yeah, but then what if someone is pushing a manifest?
So I checked this. So for example, if you using because there's other route options, right? So you could have some route options that you want to put in your manifest and some route options that you just set through the API, and that works, right? There's a merge is done between these two. So I think for us, we wouldn't be putting it in the manifest and have our special app do this until it's actually fixed upstream, right? So ideally, we want names here as well. But that felt like too much scope.
Oh, I
Because
agree.
it's
Putting
also
names here has problems too. Well, that's why I didn't
yeah,
suggest put names. I suggested don't do it in the manifest.
sure, but I mean, you like this was just to illustrate that we're doing it through route options, right? I don't like and route options how it's currently implemented. It shows up in the manifest or it shows up. You have
Yeah, some
not
of
so much
them, but it
control.
doesn't have to. You don't have to put all
Yeah,
of
okay.
them.
So are you suggesting that we add some logic in the CLI to treat these route options differently?
I guess I would add new API endpoints or update API endpoints.
But still put it in route options?
Could still be merged in the options, like in the back end.
Yeah, so you would just make it a Cloud Foundry API, CAPI API endpoint. I don't know what
This is an
Stephan thinks about this.
API endpoint to update route, so you can
Yeah,
options.
Yeah, that's what it's currently is.
shove it in some API endpoint that already exists.
Yes.
But yeah, I think options to me or like route options doesn't mean it has to be in the app manifest. It's just what gets sent
Yep.
along with the route.
Yes. Yeah. They, for example, they're using the route options for customizing the routing algorithm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why they show up there, right? Currently.
Yeah, I think that's
Yes.
the only thing in the manifest right now. I could be wrong. There might be one other thing for
Yeah,
options.
I think that's what I saw in there. Yeah. So
This is also some kind of customization of the route, or restriction of the route.
yeah. Yeah, I also found that like because I started out naming this like more of a hash structure, right? And then I went with this flat structure because I found during implementation that that's what the CLI expects. It was not explicit that that's how route options are supposed. Like, I don't know if that's like the expectation that route options are always a hash one level deep, or can it be nested, right? Like that. I think some components expect it to be or have no opinion, but the CLI had opinions there. So that's why I ended up with this. So from a UX point of view, if we want to do something on the CLI side, that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, because then the CLI can use names, do a lookup,
mhm.
and then we use GUIDs in the API.
Yeah, but but that would mean, yeah, I'm looking at Stephan. Do you have an opinion about like making this a separate API endpoint and then merging it on the back end in route options? Because then the merge comes in will end up in the cloud controller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
something
But
I
it's
did.
not a merge, it's like adding two things together.
This
It's not
is
like they're going to
this is
have different
perfect.
information.
We have Stephan here and
Well,
Greg
it means,
and Amelia. You just fight. I just want this solved, right? I'm here, the end user.
I mean,
You all just fight. Where's the
add,
dirty stuff gonna go?
adding an API to Cappy, having Cappy do business logic, and then send that business logic to router is like how things worked for a decade before we added route options. So route options is the exception. Adding APIs to Cappy is like standard operating procedure.
And still for route options, there is a validation in the cloud controller. So that was the agreement when we implemented this. So most components are completely transparent, but even in Cappy, route options are not completely transparent, but there is a validation. So if you have a route option that is a Boolean, then we check that it is a Boolean. So we know the semantics, but we don't do, let's say, sophisticated logic. We store it as a vanilla data in the database, and we just pass it over to Diego.
Yeah.
That's
And if
how it
we wanted
works.
more validations, maybe it doesn't go in route options. Maybe it's just a new thing. Like route options was made to pass through really simple choices, like a routing algorithm, through the whole system.
I mean, if you want to specify now application widths, and it comes to a broader scope, and you have lots of these policies, then you end up in something that is comparable to the policy DB at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And then it's a question whether you want to store a list of 200 grids in one field, or you want to have a dedicated table for it.
But we specifically put in like that. There's already a PR to limit the size of route options, right? So as an operator, you have the ability to set the maximum size to route options. So it's not growing without bounds.
That also means that you are limited what you can specify as policies. So you can then have, I don't know, X widths, which is, I don't know, 40 characters or 50. And then I think it was 1 kilobyte or something like that.
And if your organization is that weird, right, you can always just start tweaking your route announcement or something, right? Because this is like a trade-off between messages being sent by the router and network bandwidth and stuff, right? Like it's an platform optimization thing that's really specific to your use case.
Maybe one thing you said, Stephan, the choice between storing it just the array of GUIDs or in a table. One benefit of storing it in a table would be automatic cleanups. Like you could do automatic cleanups. For example, in C2C policy, when apps don't exist anymore, we get rid of the policy. And so like
these are a follow-up question. What you want to delete an app? Can you delete it if there's still a policy on it, or is the policy automatically deleted? Questions have to be answered, and the implementation has at least to be able to implement that in reasonable time. So if I have to read all route options of all applications, and then this is not a good idea.
Yeah, it seems like maybe it should be more of a first-class object.
But what about if you want to do this between different cloud foundries?
I think then you could There's like a chance you could put a little checkbox that's like, is this external to this foundation? Okay, I'll never clean it up, and I don't care if like it doesn't have to match anything in my database. And maybe it gives you a little metadata field so you get to write a note to yourself about it, where it comes from.
Then we have two classes of such upgrades, right? Managed ones in the same foundation, which have cleanup and validation rules, and then freestyle whatever. And then
if we only have two classes, that's an improvement over most of the data in Cappy. Like, come on, Cappy has private domains, shared domains, and shared private domains.
And internal domains.
And internal domains.
And internal domains.
I'll make some more if
Yeah.
you want.
Every second ticket is
think
about internal domains.
This feature will benefit from org default domain. So if you can put the domain default for the org, then the app developer doesn't need to do anything. Just push the app without specifying route. Then. But it's a different discussion.
I don't know. I just hear a lot of like increasing the scope or making the scope of this RFC bigger.
But
I would say making the feature better usable by operators.
yes.
Or
how
the-
much do you like converting GUIDs to things?
or there's always the other RFC. So
Yeah.
where a lot of the stuff is already implemented in policy server, in which case the only thing is we just need to convince SAP to turn on C2C networking.
Mhm.
Like it's like
Yeah, but
a
no,
couple
no,
manifest properties, right?
No, but then you're gonna have to go implement everything that GoRouter does and gives you in Envoy, right? That's the alternative. And there's a big gap there, observability wise and everything basically.
Load balancing.
Load balancing, all the stuff you want to use route options for,
Route
right? Like that
services.
stuff,
Come
route
on.
services. Yeah. So how to move forward then? What's the minimal thing we can do at this point to make everybody happy?
So we had agreement about the Bosch side, operator side. And the question is now with this app developer side.
Maybe as a minimal feature, is it a possibility to define an option that says from the certificate, I validate a certain claim in this certificate with a certain value. That means we do not talk anymore about upgrades, upnames, or whatever. And obviously, we then also lose UX because the CLI for that it is just opaque strings. But we can implement a validation on certain attributes in the certificate. And whether this is an upgrade by chance or by implementation, or it's an org grid or a space grid or something I invented my own from a external, maybe not even a CF foundation, but a completely different system, is then it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because that's where the if you look at the can you scroll up to the Bosch side again? Because I already went with more of a plugin structure there, right? So you see CF for authorization, the mode is CF identity, and then there's config. The idea being that you could, for example, also extract fields differently. Right, and then the app developer side should follow that, right? Because your cert might be issued by something else, right? But you still want to have the Go router validate the cert based on the CA, and then have the access rules be enforced based on a field in the certificate, right? That's a broader scope of this. But that would then be a cloud.
Just a moment.
So we're not talking now, or are we?
Yeah, you can talk now, just don't talk to Stephan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, it's an interesting idea, but does that mean it goes to Cloud Controller in a different API? And then it becomes even there's even less validation then, right? Policy-wise. So how do you envision that? Is that Stephan? Is that like an API on the Cloud Controller? And what type of validations are we gonna do?
For the proposal that I made, we would make no validation. We would validate that the attribute is a string with certain lengths, etc., and the value is another string of a certain value, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there would be no further validation, and more or less it's a declarative and platform implemented way of something you could also do in a route service today. Or let the application developers implement, but we learned that they usually cannot make it, and I agree with that. Yeah.
But that's close to what we currently do or the current proposal is with route options. Right, it's just a string that's being passed along by Cloud Controller, and it doesn't care about it, right?
Yeah.
And Go Router is the enforcement point, and that's why there's a whole section like about feedback to the end users. If you scroll down, there's all sorts of warnings and errors because that's the only way Go Router can give feedback to users, right? Was my understanding, right? So, yeah, there's a bunch of router log messages being proposed to give feedback about these things at runtime.
Okay. Should we continue discussion in the PR then a little bit to clarify the ideas or the
I don't know. I want to understand where everybody stands because it's to me not clear what the next thing is I need to go do on this.
Yeah, so maybe we can get some of this discussion that we've just had on the record in the PR. So I know Amelia's already posted a big piece of feedback, but if there's some additional stuff there, and then we can try to encode some of the stuff that Stephan and all we're talking about, like what an API side implementation of this might look like. And then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Like,
Go.
yeah, I don't think it's like much work from an API point of view or from an RFC point of view to say we're putting this in the CAPI API, right? It's a separate API endpoint. I think because the UX wouldn't, I mean, to the end developer it would change to the CFCLI part, right? They don't see the GUIDs. But on the other side, right? Like on the other hand, if you do cross foundation, then you cannot do the lookup, right? So they need to be allowed to set something themselves. So that's where this like it comes back in a circle again to this like it should just be a policy and like we shouldn't care, right? Like we cannot do the validation.
Just because we don't care in some cases doesn't mean we'd have to be like, we don't care about any case.
But how are you gonna do that validation then? Like you try to look up the app GUID, and
No,
if
you
you
just send a
find
Boolean and you're like, you won't find this one. Ignore this one.
Yeah, have some like external internal distinction.
yeah.
I guess for me, what I would want to see next is like the RFC rewritten to, I would say the things that I feel like we've definitely agreed on is n this not happening in the app manifest and no GUIDs in the Bosch manifest. Does everyone agree? No one's gonna, okay.
So
And then what the CAPI API looks like, whether it's gonna be more fully fleshed or less fully fleshed, I feel like it's up for debate. And yeah, it would be good to have those options written down. Or if there's one that you prefer, write that one and then I'm happy to give more feedback.
Yeah, this at least I don't have concrete use cases for the app manifest side. That's why it's hard to me to argue. But Ruben, you seems like you have concrete use cases from Rollbank.
no, I don't care about the manifest. The manifest is just in here because
No,
it was
I
an
mean,
easy way to orchestrate to
I mean,
demonstrate it.
yeah, authorizations on app developer side. How what kind of authorization you can need?
Yeah, sure. Like allowing one app to talk to another app, right? Like that's a thing that as an app developer you want to be able to allow.
Mhm.
But and the manifest and the GUIDs, right? Like I think what I'm hearing from Amelia is just she wants that in a behind the CF-CLI command, right? And not in the manifest.
Yeah, because like C2C is allowing one app to talk to another app,
Yeah.
but this is setting policies on routes in app manifests. Like it's controlling things that are outside of the
I mean, it's
app
setting
manifest
route
too.
options, which is the update route command, right? And then you happens like it's also possible to do it through the manifest because that's how it's currently wired, right? With route options. But you would probably run a command to do it, which is the CF update route.
Yeah.
Which goes to one API. Yeah, so are we concerned about the manifest side or is it the
What's the other option?
yeah, the other option? Yeah, that's
Can I
what
be
I'm
concerned about
thinking.
multiple things?
Yeah, try. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned about putting it in an app manifest because routes, like if I put my application only has one instance and I put it in the app manifest, no other app manifest can affect my app. Like routes can be affected across app manifests. And so for clarity's sake, I think it makes sense to put it in an API.
Yeah, so as a minimal thing, if I would change the CF-CLI to filter out these things from the manifest, and I'll only allow it to be set through update route options.
No.
No, but I'm
How
just saying, like,
confusing would that be? You put something in your app manifest, you push, and it doesn't apply. You have to run another command.
no, but just like saying, like, your
If you want to make an API that takes a config file, I'm all for it.
Or it has to be separate from the app manifest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like with the filtering we're gonna do now on this the CAPI side, right? So I'm just saying if all you're concerned about is the app manifest, then we can also do the filtering on the CLI side, because the CLI is in the end the thing, or is it actually an API endpoint now doing the manifest? I'm not sure. Do we apply? Did we already do that? That manifests
Yeah,
are now.
manifest parsing is server side now.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. That was something I was missing. No, then it needs to go yeah, then separate API makes sense. Okay. We'll make it an API. And then without a validation just being if it's checking if it's a string, right? But Amelia wants it to also check if it's a GUID and the app
I mean, I
exists.
think more validation is better, given that this is a security feature, and presumably you would like to easily know who can talk to what app.
And I
But
think
what's the risk?
the default case is it all being within the same deployment. Like
Yeah.
the the vast majority of our features assume that everything is deployed on the same
Yeah.
CF deployment. And then we have a carve out case for people who are doing more complex multi-deployment workflows.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the security risk, right? Because the security risk, I don't see it much, right? So if you make a typo in your GUID, there's not a big chance that you're on accident typing the GUID of another app.
You're talking about what's
Right,
the
so
security risk of using GUIDs or of not doing a lookup?
but both, I guess, right? So the risk is you're making a typo in your GUID and then you're not doing the lookup, so you end up with opening up your app to an app that doesn't exist, right? Or
I don't see that as the security risk. Obviously,
okay, what's
that's
the
low
security risk?
chance. I would say it's that you set something and then decide you don't want it, but it's hard for you as a human to read GUIDs, and so it's hard for you to evaluate what can talk to what easily, and so you're less likely to do it. And so you just leave these old rules alone because you're like, oh man, I'm not going to do
I
that
see.
today.
Yeah, so it's about the how as a like app developer can you see which apps still have access to your app,
Yeah.
right? But that's the CLI lookup needing to look up these things when it's listing these rules, right?
I think,
Because we're storing
yeah,
GUIDs.
it could be CLI or like the way that Cappy does it, like apps are in spaces and they're stored as GUIDs, but it doesn't say I'm in space and then give me a GUID like Cappy gives me the name.
But
Yeah,
it's interesting question how you come to the GUID if you don't have access to the place where the application is deployed. So someone has to send you the GUID or the name.
But only for the carve-out case. Like for the one small case where you're in a different foundation, right?
No, only also in the same foundation. Maybe you want to allow an app which is not in your organ space. You don't have access to that.
Yeah, but I would assume that when you're setting it in Cappy, it can take a name and it will do the lookup in Cappy.
no,
Is that not how it does it right now?
no, in copy everything is GUIDs. Every reference is always
Ah,
a
I see,
GUID.
I see.
And then there are search list operations where you can find the GUID for an application or route, etc. So the model, if we do it as a real API, then it would be a GUID that you specify.
Yeah.
And of course, the UX, that means CLI or whatever other
Sure.
interface, they can, of course, do it then nicely for humans.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
That's how
so
it works.
you need to specify space, org space, app name, right? To be able to look up a GUID, and then you probably also need a role to be able to look it up,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, in order to look up a name, an app name, you have to
And
have a role in
no,
the
to
space
look
where
up
the app
a
is.
GUID based on an org space app, right? Like if you have those three things, like names for those three things, then you want to look up the GUID for the app because you need to put it in the rule, then you need a role in those places.
Yeah,
And
otherwise you cannot look up.
yes, and with this current proposal, you can just put in the rule, the GUID, because that's often how these things go, right? You get the GUID from another team saying, "Oh, we need access to this thing," right? And then you put it here, right? And you don't have to go manage all these access rights.
Right, because if you put in just the space, or I'm sorry, just the application name and trying to do it that way, you also need the other two bits of information
Yeah.
where you'd have to be supplying the the org name and the space name. And maybe that's not a terrible way to go, because those would probably be things you knew and the humans could look at, versus getting an org and a space and an app GUID back to give to another team.
Mhm. Yeah, but that's also like you could have, like, when listing these things and reviewing, right? It could be that you don't have access to actually look up these names.
Yeah, that's why in C2C you have to have permissions in both places.
I know.
Okay, I have to go. This sounds
yeah,
like a problem for you to noodle on.
Hey, very
There's
briefly, I threw it in the doc, but Cloud Foundry Summit website is up. Registration will go live, I think, today, but sponsorships and CFP is open. And it's a 2-day event in Heidelberg, Germany, at the Marriott, where we've been. I stayed there when we went to Heidelberg last time. It's nice. We'll be forming a program committee that doesn't have to be formed for like 2 months because we got a lot of time here. But we should think about how we want this 2-day event to look and be structured, right? We could do a couple of things here. So anyway, brainstorm on that. We're going to be reaching out about this a lot this week and next week with from the governing board to the wider community. So stoked.
awesome.
thank you.
Sure. Thanks all.
All right, take care, folks.
See ya.
See you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Okay. So Ruben, we had interesting discussions. I think. Do you know how to proceed now?
No. It's still a bit unclear.
So
I think you
yeah.
cannot have it all. Either you get, from my point of view, you get a platform provided feature to make assertions on a client certificate. That would be a feature, I would say, that makes sense. It doesn't solve everything, and it leads certain maybe ugly responsibility if you want to use the app identity certificates to the app developers. And usually app developers make it wrong. But for those who don't make it wrong, it's an added value, and they have to less implement. And then the alternative would be you want to have a feature that focuses mostly on these app identity certs, and then you could provide a little additional lookups and nice to have functionality to search for apps. You can do it in CLI, and like for C2C, you will run into the same problem. So maybe we have to enforce that people have rights in source and target space, because only then the lookup works reasonable well. But yeah, if you call with CF curl the API directly and you specify GUIDs, then you specify GUIDs. And of course, Cloud Controller could then check whether you have access to this GUIDs. That can be implemented. That's pretty close to what C2C makes. And maybe these are two different features with even more route options than I don't know, but that depends a bit on which functionality is needed by which user. So personally, I don't need any of the two at the moment, but this is what from what the Cloud Controller could do. Yeah, either we do not validate anything and put more responsibility to the users, or we say we do a full validation, but that gives them more constraints, and probably we have to request that if you specify an app GUID, it must be visible for you, otherwise you cannot do it, and it's rejected. Which then also locks out a few use cases, maybe. But that's the way it is.
Yeah. So it starts to feel like that you need some sort of like plugin or mode again, where you select which type of enforcement you want, right?
Yeah, but before we implement now a plugin interface, maybe we ask again which are the use cases we want to concentrate, and we could also do it with two different sets of options. Yeah, MTLS assertion and app identity cert configuration, and then that would also be possible. I mean, the Cloud Controller can validate these route option properties, or whether it's in a separate API. we can also store it differently and use the route option feature only to communicate on to Diego, and then so that it's a sort of hidden route option. We just use the route option implementation from Diego to Nuts and Go Router, but for Cloud Controller, it's a full API, and we forbid hidden route options that start with an underscore. Just speculating. I mean, that's probably a better implementation than I have in mind now, and such route options are not approachable via regular generic route options. Even with today route options, specifying the routes in the manifest is today simply wrong. That's why there is a CF manifest v2 proposal, but it's unclear when and if this will ever happen.
Oh, to take the routes out of the manifest?
To take the routes out of the application. The idea of this v2 manifest is to have a manifest, a declarative way to specify everything, but it follows the model that you have in the Cloud Controller, and here routes are independent of application. So you would have a own top level, at the same for services and service bindings, but that's far away future. It doesn't make sense to put this into this RFC additionally. That doesn't help.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the things that I could imagine.
Thanks. I will. Beyhan, we probably should have a call maybe tomorrow or something.
Yeah, let's
figure out how we want to move forward.
Yeah. And the other RFC, Stephan, or the CLI-based one you will discuss now in the ARI working group.
Yeah, exactly. We have a 20 minutes ARI working group meeting. I hope that people from CLI come. I have advertised. Let's see. So I'm not happy with this RFC as it is now. I hope I put in my.
No, I agree. Like this RFC should be about like timelines, right, and deprecating stuff, right, and like similar to what we have for V2 API in CAPI.
Timelines are again difficult in open source, but at least it should give a roadmap. We think, the plugin interface should evolve in the following direction, because that's, if I would be a plugin author, that I want to know what are the next steps for my plugin. I know it will stop working on SAP Foundation since 1 month, and for other foundations end of the year or maybe spring next year, whatever comes out. But what do I do now with my plugin? Throw it away? If I change it, in which direction? I know which answer I would give, but
Yeah, like I'm in favor of like making this. We already have this Golang API library, right? Like, why is that not the thing we use, and do the plugin really minimal, right? Just the authentication part.
I have thought that this is already agreed on. That's why there was this long discussion on this bug, and I reference this comment all the time. It's the smallest possible way forward, and
that's what I like. And all this tooling that's being built, it's like, why are we doing so much tooling to get people from one thing to the other? Like, why not? And then the other thing is not even. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like
without tooling. It should not show up, and you can use this tooling if you want. If you own 20 plugins, maybe it's worth it.
How many plugins are we even talking about that people actually care about?
Yeah, I don't know.
No,
So all SAP plugins have been migrated a year ago or 2 years ago to V3 manually without any libraries, etc. Just plain HTTP calling.
So it feels like go ahead.
Yeah, but it will be great if somehow I won't be able to come to the ARI working group, but somehow to have one proposal for the minimalistic stuff, how it is deprecated, and the minimal solution how plugin can migrate to V3, and then an extra RFC can, if their interest, build again a little bit more sophisticated interface or more support, and also reflect to the marketplace if there is interest for that, because there are also some suggestions about the market.
About like metadata information. That makes maybe sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. right? Would be a thing to help people motivate or motivate authors to move forward to the new API. Yeah.
Okay. Then.
So Stephan, you will be attending, right? That one.
Yeah, I host the meeting,
Yeah.
so I will be
Oh
there.
yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, I think someone from Xiao from Rabobank will also be there.
Okay.
Yeah, I also saw thumbs up from the CLI approvers too. I think they also most probably will come. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Then
Have
see you
a nice.
latest next Tuesday.
Take care. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.